The story is of three riders. They were wealthy and powerful in their own right. This trip, though, they were traveling light and traveling fast. Each one of them was riding a stallion that was bred to be able to run all day without growing tired. They had been together for over a week, but not much was said, for they were riding to see their comrade, an old friend who was also rich and powerful. They had heard the stories. They had heard the rumors. At first they did not believe them, but they kept coming until finally they had to find out for themselves whether it was true. They rearranged or prearranged a meeting place, and they had been riding for a week. This was the night, and they would not sleep very much, but this was the night that they knew tomorrow they would be able to see his compound, his home, where he lived. They had already been on his land for over a day, riding as fast as they could. They had been there before, but this time the land looked a lot different. When they had visited years before, there were flocks and herds, sheep and goats and cattle everywhere, by the thousands, but now it was desolate. Not an animal to be seen. They got up early the next morning and rode as fast and as hard as they could till they came to the last little hill that overlooked the city compound. They reined in their horses to take a look, and it was devastating what they saw. Years before, when they were there were people, there was a house, huge barns and corrals, and animals, horses, cattle, people everywhere. Like a small village, but now it was totally deserted, desolate. Not a person to be seen, not an animal to be seen. They rode down to the main house as fast as they could. They dismounted and looked around, but they already knew that they would find no one. After a short meeting, they decided to ride into the town, which was another hour's ride. And they rode into the town, knowing that they could find someone who knew about their friend. They asked several people, but every time they asked somebody, the person just kind of looked down and turned and walked away, as if fearing some kind of a curse might be put on them. Till finally they found an old man that said the last anyone saw of him, he was out at the city garbage dump. And so once again they get on their horses and they ride another hard 20 or 30 minutes. And they dismount at the city garbage dump. They look around and they do not see him. And they start to separate, but they hear a sound. It is a horrible moaning, groaning, crying, weeping sound that they cannot place it. It sounds more like an animal than a person. They come together to walk around the big trash heap where they can tell the sound is emanating from. And as they walk around the corner, they see something that horrifies them. It looks like a man, but it also looks like an animal. They do not recognize him or it for whatever he is. It is pitiful what they see. A man, they think, totally naked, sitting with his back toward them, his whole body covered in sores, oozing pus from multiple places. And as they slowly walk around to his side, they can see that the man has a broken piece of pottery scratching his skin, scratching the sores as the blood and the pus runs down the arm. They get quite close before the man even knows that they are there. And as he looks up from his position to see them, they are horrified once again because now they can see his eyes, and the eyes never change. That is their friend. That is the one that they heard the rumors about. They were true. Everything they heard was true, but it was even worse. They were so dumbfounded, they did not know what to do. As Job looked up at them through his pitiful, horrid-looking face, they go to their horse and unpack what little they had brought and set up a camp. And they sat by their friend for 7 days without opening their mouth. Why had something like this happened to the greatest man of the East? A man who was a king in his own right, who was wealthy in his own right, who was powerful in his own right, had been reduced to this. That is the question that all of you will answer, or won't answer for you sometime in your life. The question of why. Why is there such pain? Why do we have to suffer? Why do I have loss? And why did they have to die? It is one of the primary metaphysical questions that everyone struggles with. The philosopher Nietzsche said, if a person knows why, the what is not that much of a problem. And that is really true. It doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter so much what's going on in my situation or circumstance if I only knew why. If I just knew why I had to go through this. Why my family has to deal with this. That's the question. That's the pertinent question that everyone wants answered. After the seventh day, Job himself started to cry out. And then the book of Job, which is possibly the oldest written book in recorded history. Nobody knows who wrote it, but it concerns a topic that everyone deals with. And for the next 30 some odd chapters of this book, you have a discourse and a dialogue about why bad things happen to good people. Why is there such pain and sorrow and loss and death? Whatever answers you have come up with, they came up with. They had a discussion, as you will have discussions about this question. One of the discussions centered around, well, you have evil in your life and you've done bad things and God is punishing you. And certainly some of the pain in life comes from sin. It comes from reaping what we sow. And you can do bad things and you may have bad consequences. But that's not all of pain and all of suffering. And Job said as much. He said, that's not the case here. So then they said, well, maybe God's trying to teach you a lesson. That He's putting you through this pain. And there are certainly lessons to be learned from pain and loss and suffering. But it doesn't answer the whole question. And Job said, that's not what's going on here. And so they go to the next argument that people make. And this may be an argument that you've made and wondered sometimes. Maybe God doesn't care. If God allows such pain and sorrow and suffering, maybe it's a God that really doesn't care about your problems. And He doesn't care about you. But Job said, I don't think that's what's going on here. So they come up with another argument, and that is, maybe there is no God. Have you ever thought about that one? With such pain and such suffering, with such loss and death, maybe there is no God. But Job says, that's not the answer either. Every one of those dialogues, every one of the things that I've described so far will enter your mind somewhere in your life, I'll guarantee. But you need to have your theology straight when it comes to pain and loss and suffering. Because pain speaks its own language. Job's wife told Job, why don't you curse God and die? That's where she was. Just curse God and die. But Job said, that's not the answer either. But you need to have an answer. Because you will go through pain, and you will go through suffering, and you will go through loss, and you will have death enter your life. And you need to have your theology while you're healthy, because pain, you cannot see clearly when you're in pain. Things become foggy when you are in pain. So instead of having terrible situations and coming to terrible conclusions, learn your philosophy and learn your theology while you are healthy. And as they thought, and as they discussed the possible reasons that Job came to where he was, the wind started to blow. They did not even notice it at first, until it became stronger and stronger. But they were deeply involved in their discussion. And it kind of surprised them when they looked up and the clouds were covering. It was becoming dark, and the wind had turned to start to where it was blowing in a whirlwind fashion, what we might call a small tornado. Not the kind that blows houses away, but the kind you can kind of see that stirs up the dust. And it gets a little bit bigger, and it's coming toward them. And it grabs their attention, and they pause in their dialogue. And they are horrified when they hear a voice that comes from the whirlwind. They are horrified when they understand that the voice comes from the inside as well as the outside, that all of them can hear it, and it seems to encompass their whole being. Because all at once, they understand that they are listening to the voice of God. What does God say when you ask that important question, God, why did this happen? Why does my brother have cancer? Why did my son-in-law commit suicide? Why did my father die like he did? You'll all have those questions, maybe couched in a little different form. What does God say?